So, I thought about things to do for schizophrenia awareness, and I know yesterday was Schizophrenia Awareness Day, and I guess I could go on telling my story. Back in 2014, I was sent to Oshner main campus for schizophrenia, and I could say this, that at the time I was dealing with a whole bunch of different contradictory belief systems, a whole bunch of different delusions, hallucinations. I've dealt with hallucinations since I was like 6 years old, I'd say. At the time I was dealing with insomnia, sleep disorder for the past 2 or 3 years prior to that. And I'm still dealing with insomnia, sleep disorder even to this day. Today I'm still taking antipsychotics. Of course, obviously you still have to take antipsychotics. Well, past when you are hospitalized, obviously you're going to be taking them for the rest of your life. That's the deal with schizophrenia. But when I was hospitalized, I remember, I basically remember it as kind of like this. Like, how do I say it? The first 3 days before I went to hospitalization, I couldn't sleep. And the thing was that I was going through some severe delusions, like I said before. A lot of them were tied to conspiracy stuff, and a lot of the things I'm debunking now are criticizing the conspiracy theories that I once believed when, of course, I was in the delusional mindset. Now, of course, I don't believe in any of that shit, but of course, excuse my language, but I feel that criticizing conspiracy theories is obviously a way of coping and dealing with a lot of this stuff. But the thing is that at the time I had 3 nights where I didn't sleep going into the hospital. And at the time I was still religious, and I remember because I was still a Catholic at the time, I remember we went to a Catholic priest to exorcise the demons away from me, or whatever the hell it was. But I didn't have demons. It was a neurological situation, and as schizophrenia is. And I had to be hospitalized, and I was. And the thing that I remember being in the hospital was, the hospital was like, very much, people say it's like a prison, but it basically, it's only a prison for those who say that it's a prison. In a way, it's a hospital for psychiatric, and so it has security measures for security reasons. The thing is, you're not gonna have nice soft beds like you would have in a regular hospital because of security reasons, but they're there for those security reasons. They're there to protect patients, etc. So I remember when I first went in, I was laying on a hard bed in an isolation chamber, and there was another patient next to me, and I remember she was being sent. They were looking for other hospitals to send her to, and she was eventually sent somewhere else. I can't say exactly where, but she was sent someplace else. And then they sent me onto the ward. But when they sent me onto the ward, it was after I fell asleep, and I think that might have been for security reasons as well. Basically, they waited till the medication sedated me, and then put me on the ward after I was completely sedated. And on the ward, I remember mostly sleeping for most of the time, and just not just mostly sleeping for the entire time, and not really doing much because I was trying to recuperate from the 3 or 4 nights that I didn't sleep. And I remember hearing how the rest of the people in the hospital were going through these therapy sessions where they were trying to learn how to meditate, etc. And I still know that it's still kind of a battle for me as far as meditation and as far as sleeping, because at the same time, schizophrenia is kind of a learning process, especially when you're trying to learn how to sleep again, because a lot of times you have to learn how to sleep again, and it's very difficult. And I know I spent 2 weeks in that mental hospital, and I remember also too, the only other thing that I basically did there is pretty much walk up and down the hallways, because up and down the hallway, because there was nothing much else to do while you were there. You could go in the day room, but you had to watch what everybody else was watching, and to me that kind of felt boring. And at the same time, they had an arts and crafts room, but it was really kind of boring going in there as well, and nobody actually went in there. And then of course they had the room where everybody went and ate at, but that was only open when everybody went and ate. And they had another isolation chamber, and they had the nurses station, which nobody was allowed into at the time. Nobody was allowed into. And of course everything was controlled at the nurses station. Everything, this whole area of the hospital was behind double doors on both sides, so no one can escape. I think the whole area was completely cement. The walls were cemented in, so therefore there was no way of actually breaking out of the place. Yeah, it was basically a very high security place. As far as concerns for a hospital, but it had to be, because people with schizophrenia are not in the right sense of reality, and that is the problem with schizophrenia. Is that people who have it, who are not doing the things that they should be doing, maybe set in delusions or in hallucinations, maybe set in into a mindset that is way different than what reality is. And in order to get them to come back to reality, we have to put those security measures in place to basically keep them safe, but to keep themselves safe and to keep others safe. And it's a very, very hard situation. It's very hard to go through that process, but it has to be done. Since then, I've gone through at least one recovery program or two recovery programs, one or two big recovery programs since I left the hospital, or three recovery programs, excuse me for saying that. I went through Greenbrier, which is it's now called South Shore, for partial hospitalization programs. And the partial hospitalization program helps you to get over your delusions. That's where you're going to go through the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, etc., etc. And then there's intensive outpatient therapy, which continues the cognitive behavioral therapy beyond that. And the partial hospitalization program is something that's done 5 days a week, with only 2 days that you get off, which is Saturday and Sunday. And during that time, you're expected to, sleep with someone else, be living with someone else, not sleep with somebody else, but live with somebody else at the exact time. And during intensive outpatient therapy, they give you a little bit more leniency. You can actually live in your own apartment, and instead of actually living in, say, a group home or something like that. So in partial hospitalization, you pretty much, they're expecting you to live in a group home for certain reasons, because they're not trusting you enough to live on your own. Then there's the third form of therapy, which is mostly now you're taking therapy by a weekly basis on, usually 140-minute session a week. And that's something I'm going through now. And I'm doing that now with Ochsner, and which is the same healthcare provider that I went to for the hospitalization in the first place. And Ochsner has been pretty good to me. I think they've done a lot of good things for me over the years. I know a lot of my medical stuff has been done at Ochsner, and I've had nothing but good stuff for that hospital and that hospital facility. Basically, they have some of the best doctors in the world. Even though, of course, I tend to criticize the medical field as far as the government goes, because obviously I believe in single payer healthcare, and that single payer healthcare would be much better for us than the private health system. But I think Ochsner has done a very, very good job as far as a medical provider can actually go. And the last thing I want to say is that basically each of us who have schizophrenia in my opinion, are stars in the darkness of schizophrenia, and we shine like the light in the darkness of schizophrenia, and that to me is important, especially during this time where we're doing nothing but staying home and doing nothing but isolation, excuse me, and we're not able to go out and do what we would normally be able to do. And I know times are tough, but they are where they are. And I would like to shout out my healthcare provider, Oshner Medical, for what they've done throughout the years in giving me my medical assistance, etc., and helping me recover, especially today during Schizophrenia Awareness Day, well, yesterday during Schizophrenia Awareness Day. And I'd like to thank everybody else as well. Thank you.
I mean, we always had kind of a good system, so we're just kind of working with a little more now, and yeah, just trying to get everybody what they need and the time they need. My team is pretty good. You know, they've all been supportive. Everybody's kind of just doing their role. You know, it's kind of like everybody has to come together. It's like even the people who aren't at the hospital that bring us like donate food and stuff. You know, being able to help them, seeing what they do, and seeing in the intensive care unit, seeing what they have to go through with each patient. Just being able to help them in any way. We actually opened up a whole nother ICU wing at Kenner, and I'm just seeing with those nurses, you know, how much time and patience and care they have to take with their patients. So, you know, I just any way I can help them to do it.
I like working at Oshner because it's a family environment. I like the people I work for. Everybody's very friendly and they really care about their patients.
I can't imagine working anyplace else. I mean, we have a really strong team. It becomes your second family. We're not the largest facility, we're not the smallest facility, but you get to know so many people in the facility, from housekeeping all the way to administration. Everyone's always rounding, and it really becomes your second family with these people a lot.
When they come and bring the new people in, I say, well, welcome to Ochsner family. It's good.
The patients are always first. Everybody pitches in every day to do whatever's needed to take care of the patients that have entrusted us.
I really enjoyed Ochsner and the way they treat their employees and the benefits they offered, and chose to stay with Ochsner. If you're working with a family, it's a true work family environment.